The studio lights were bright, the audience was excited, and everything seemed perfectly normal as the morning talk show began. Fans had tuned in expecting a friendly conversation between legendary rock star Rod Stewart and popular television host Lorraine Kelly. Nobody in the audience imagined they were about to witness one of the most uncomfortable interviews of the year. Rod Stewart walked onto the set with a confident smile. The crowd applauded loudly as Lorraine welcomed him. At first, the conversation was exactly what viewers expected. They talked about his music career, upcoming projects, and memorable moments from his decades in the spotlight. Rod appeared relaxed. He joked with the audience and shared funny stories from his early days as a musician. Lorraine laughed along, keeping the mood light and entertaining. For nearly 10 minutes, everything went smoothly. Then the conversation slowly began to change. Lorraine shifted toward more personal topics. She asked Rod about recent headlines that had surrounded him. At first, the question seemed harmless enough. Rod answered politely, though viewers noticed his smile becoming less natural. When Lorraine brought up criticism that had recently appeared in several media outlets, Rod's posture immediately changed. The audience sensed it. The energy in the room suddenly felt different. Rod leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "People always have something to say," he replied. Lorraine nodded but continued. "Some would argue that public figures should be prepared for that kind of scrutiny." The comment appeared to irritate him. "Prepared for it doesn't mean I have to enjoy it," Rod answered. A few audience members exchanged nervous glances. Lorraine attempted to press further. "But surely you understand why some people have raised concerns." Rod's expression hardened. "What concerns exactly?" The host began explaining the criticism in more detail. As she spoke, Rod interrupted. "I think that's unfair." The interruption caught Lorraine by surprise. She attempted to finish her point. Rod interrupted again. "No, because you're presenting opinion as fact." The audience became noticeably quieter. Even the production staff standing behind the cameras looked uncomfortable. Lorraine tried to regain control of the interview. "That's not what I'm doing at all." Rod shook his head. "That's exactly what you're doing." The tension was now impossible to ignore. Viewers watching from home later described the atmosphere as painfully awkward. For several moments, neither side seemed willing to back down. Lorraine remained professional, but her tone became firmer. "I think it's important to ask questions that viewers are interested in." Rod responded immediately. "And I think it's important to ask fair questions." The audience reacted with a mixture of gasps and nervous laughter. The conversation had transformed from a friendly interview into a confrontation. Lorraine attempted to move on to another subject. However, the damage had already been done. Rod was visibly frustrated. His answers became shorter. His patience appeared to be disappearing. Every new question seemed to increase the tension. When Lorraine mentioned another controversial topic connected to his public image, Rod finally lost his composure. He leaned forward. "Why are we spending so much time on negativity?" The room fell silent. Lorraine paused. "Because people are talking about it." Rod laughed sarcastically. "People are talking about a lot of things." The audience could feel the confrontation escalating. For a moment, it seemed as if both sides realized how uncomfortable the exchange had become, but neither retreated. Lorraine asked one final follow-up question. That was the moment everything exploded. Rod raised his voice. "I came here to talk about my work, not sit through an interrogation." A loud murmur spread through the audience. Several viewers covered their mouths in shock. Lorraine looked stunned. "I don't think anyone is interrogating you." Rod stood by his words. "It certainly feels like it." The cameras continued rolling as the atmosphere became increasingly tense. Producers backstage were reportedly communicating rapidly through their headsets. Everyone understood that the interview was heading toward dangerous territory. Lorraine attempted to calm the situation. "Let's take a breath and move forward." But Rod was no longer interested. He shook his head. "No, because every answer I give turns into another accusation." The audience sat frozen. Nobody knew what would happen next. The host tried one final time to redirect the conversation toward music. However, Rod appeared emotionally exhausted. His frustration had already reached its peak. A producer eventually stepped onto the edge of the set. Viewers could barely see the movement, but those inside the studio noticed immediately. There was a brief pause. The cameras cut to a wider shot. The atmosphere felt chaotic despite everyone's efforts to remain professional. Rod removed his microphone and looked toward the production area. The audience gasped. That single action changed everything. Lorraine remained seated, clearly trying to keep the broadcast under control. But the interview had effectively ended. Rod stood up. He thanked some audience members for their support. Then he walked away from the interview area. The crowd watched in disbelief. Some applauded. Others simply stared. The cameras quickly shifted. Focus as producers scrambled to manage the live broadcast. Lorraine maintained her composure despite the shocking turn of events. She addressed viewers calmly and thanked them for watching. Meanwhile, social media erupted within minutes. Clips of the heated exchange spread everywhere. Fans immediately chose sides. Some argued that Rod had every right to defend himself against what he viewed as unfair questioning. Others believed Lorraine was simply doing her job as an interviewer. Online debates exploded across countless platforms. Entertainment websites rushed to publish articles. Commentators analyzed every second of the confrontation. Body language experts discussed the interview. Television critics weighed in. By the end of the day, the dramatic exchange had become one of the most talked about entertainment stories on the internet. Days later, people were still debating who was right and who was wrong. Some viewers remembered the interview as a celebrity standing up for himself. Others saw it as an example of how quickly a professional conversation can unravel. When emotions take control, whatever the truth may have been, one thing was certain. What started as an ordinary morning television appearance became a dramatic showdown that nobody in the studio or watching at home would soon forget.